I find I have the strangest conversations with staff here at different times, and I'm just kind of like, why are we talking about this? I remember I had one staff member years ago when we started talking about ear hair. And we don't even know how we got there, and then we just looked at each other and said, this is uncomfortable. We're going to move on, What I'm talking about today is maybe a little uncomfortable as far as the subject goes, but it is, how shall I say it, absolutely necessary. If you don't get this right, the chasm between you and God is insurmountable. If you don't get this right, the chasm between you and life is insurmountable. If you don't get this right, your life is going to end up in a place of regret and despair. And you say, wow, you're being really dramatic, Scott. Isn't every sermon that important? Today's is, and as I'm walking through it with you, we're going to look at some questions people have about this topic. And we're going to kind of take ourselves out of our shoes and put them into the lives of other people and go, you know what? I came to church today, but I've discovered there's something way larger, that this gathering of people that we're talking about as we get together, and the things we're talking about are way bigger than I conceived before. The things that we, as we blow our mind, as we discover how things are, we change how we view the world. Today is one of those days, okay? And the topic I'm discovering or discussing with you today is the topic of forgiveness. I'm going to get her name wrong. She wrote a book called Left to Tell. It's Immaculée Ilbaz-Giza, I believe. I saw her speak a number of months ago. And this young lady in 1994 was in the genocide that was known as Rwanda. There are basically two tribes of people that make up Rwanda, the Tutsis and the Hutus. And the Hutus are far more populous. And for actually some time they got along really well until some of the colonial powers that were working with them set the Tutsis above the Tutsis above the Hutus, and made them a ruling class and the others more kind of working class, and this built animosity between them. And through a lot of political things, a plane crash, a number of leaders died, there was this genocide. The Hutus, for a number of weeks, went around and killed every Tutsi they could find. And over 1 million people died. It was a horrible time. This young lady, she was from a family of 6, her parents and her 3 brothers. And her father, who was a Catholic man, knew a minister in a community nearby who was a Hutu. And he trusted this man. And so when the genocide was coming and things were getting worse and worse, he entrusted his daughter to this pastor. This pastor took in 7 Tutsi women and hid them in his bathroom. The bathroom was a little tiny bathroom in his home. He had 2 bathrooms. He had them back to back. And so these 7 women, in temperatures often over 100 degrees, hid in this bathroom. They couldn't lie down. It was so pressed in there. They found that what they had to do to sleep is one would lean against the wall, and then one would lean against them, and one person maybe perhaps sit on that lap, and they could try to get comfortable. But they had to live in there for 91 days. Well, outside there were screams and murders, and her whole family was wiped out. At one point, things got so tense, the Hutus came into his house and searched his house. And they were just coming down the hallway, and they said, "What's in that room?" He said, "Well, that's our bathroom." And he said, "Okay, well, we're going to have to search it." And he was just coming down. He was right about to take the doorknob, and he turned to the pastor. He said, "We know you're a good man. We know there's nobody in there." And turned around and walked away. This young lady, who was at the time 22 or 23, spent those 91 days arguing with God about what was going on. Arguing with God about how she could ever forgive what was happening to her people. And she wrote this book. I'm going to put it in the church library if you want to borrow it and read it. It's an absolutely phenomenal story about forgiveness. You see, this lady now goes back to Rwanda and lives there and works as a contact between people. In fact, if you ever, a wonderful movie that actually won an Oscar, it's a little documentary called As We Forgive, came out about 8 or 9 years ago. And it documents that country's healing, often with religious and political leaders, getting people together to talk about their experiences. And having the perpetrators, the people that murdered everyone, in contact and living right beside the people that they'd wiped out their families. And she was touring around her country, and she brought a representative, a pastor from America with her. And they're going around. She introduced him to a young man, and he was shaking his hands, and she said, "This is the man who murdered one of my brothers." And the pastor said he was so overwhelmed because the blood drained from his face. And she said, "It's okay, it's okay." And he said he had to take a break. He went and sat down for 10, 15 minutes and just shook his head and go, "No, it's not okay. How is she doing this?" You see, you got to ask the question, how far is too much when it comes to forgiveness? How far is too much? Because I'm a student of history, and documenting over history the things people have done to each other in this world, and how much of it you look at and go, that's got to be unforgivable. I'm doing a course right now in history, and they were talking about the Russian front in Germany in the Second World War. And basically, when the Germans invaded Russia, they basically killed as many people or starved as many people as they could, pressing into Russia because they wanted their land. It was part of their doctrine that the Germans wanted that land to expand into. And so they absolutely mistreated, did horrible, horrible things to men, women, and children in that area. And then when the Russians stopped the advance of the Germans and started pressing back, as they came back, they did horrible things to the survivors and to the German people until they got to Berlin and did absolutely miserable things to those people, men, women, and children. Horrible things that I will not say today because they would just upset you. But let me just say it this way. Between the two, 40 million people got murdered. 40 million people. And you look at that and you go, that's too much. There's no way that could ever be forgiven. How would I be able to forgive someone who did that to me or did that to some loved one? You see, this is a really interesting topic in Western society because often when we talk about unforgiveness, I'm upset at my grade 4 teacher for not giving me an A in math. And some people carry that around for their whole lives, you know. I remember my maternal grandfather, who was nasty, nasty man. He was one of those people that not only made trouble with people, but would cross the country to make trouble for people. He was just he was a mean man. And I remember he hated my Uncle Harry. My Uncle Harry married my Aunt Phyllis. She was the eldest. And 40 years after, he would always make the same criticism of Harry. When he came to pick Phyllis up the first time, he parked in the driveway then instead of in the lane on the street. And he never forgave him for that. And he would say it over and over and over again. And to this day, that boggles my mind. Who cares whether he parked in the driveway or the roadway? If he did, it was a slight enough you can say, hey, next time I might need to get out, so can you park on the roadway? And then it's gone. But he could never let go of that because he lived in perpetual unforgiveness. And when I talk about the unforgiveness, when we talk about history, I'm talking about what I call logical unforgiveness. Logical unforgiveness is when we look at something and go, that's too far. There's no way that could ever be forgiven. There's no way a person ever comes back from that. There's no way those people should ever be forgiven or forgotten. But here's the problem. When you work with logical unforgiveness, it builds. It builds because often the people who are wronged, when given power, return that on the people who oppress them. And in some places in this world, our own at different times, there are generations after generations of people that hate each other and will not forgive each other, even though they can't remember why they first hated each other. And this back and forth creates this vacuum where people in a society live soulless and hurt and angry because they can't ever see a way back from the brink. They've done so much to me. They did so much to my parents. They did so much to that. I can't ever forgive. And then it brings us to the question, what is the solution to that? Because if you talk to most people tell you, yeah, you don't want to carry unforgiveness around. You get bitter, right? That's just bad. But so many of us do. So many of us remember the slights of our younger years, or remember some of the horrendous things done to us, the abuse, the neglect, all those kind of things. And we find ourselves working over and over and over again, and then into the question comes God. God, how could you let this happen? How could you let me go through that? Where were you when I was? And we look at God and he doesn't seem fair. He doesn't seem like he cares. He doesn't seem involved. And people even go so far as to say he's either not there or he's powerless. If he was there, he's got to be so reprehensible, because of what he lets go on in this world. There's no way I could love a God like that. And I've heard people say those things. And so the question is, what did God do about this sickness we have? This pillar of horrific unforgiveness in our world. What could God possibly do that would make that right? Well, today I'm going to share that solution with you. And like this young lady, perhaps you're going to discover something. Perhaps you're going to discover that unforgiveness is accessible to everyone. That people can come back and have life. That it's possible to cut that chain of unforgiveness. It's possible to cut that chain of generation after generation or people after people. And people have accessed this power. They've crossed ethnic barriers. They've crossed generational woes. They've stopped wars. They've changed countries. They've changed lives for the last 2,000 years because of what I'm about to share with you today. And if you look at it and go, no, there's no way, it's too far, there's no way God can ever do that, you can take people in every one of these situations who, like this young lady, go back to their country and not only forgive, but love and help those who were their oppressors. Are you ready? I'm going to walk through this stuff pretty quick, but that's where I want to bring you today. First of all, we talk about Jesus being crucified, and Jesus, when you're crucified, you're asphyxiated. So when you lift yourself up in the nails, you have to do that to breathe. That's why crucifixion was one of the most horrible ways to die. People could last for days. But Jesus, when he was pushing himself up and when he would breathe, little snippets of sentences would come out. And while people would, often say things when they're being crucified, of begging for mercy and all those kind of things, Jesus said things that blew our minds. And when he was crucified, he's crucified between two thieves. Often when the Romans were crucifying people, they do it in bunches. And so he had one on either side. And one of the things Jesus propped himself up on his nails and said was this sentence: Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. What does that mean? First of all, you have to know who Jesus was. He was the Son of God, second member of the Trinity. He lived a perfect life. And when he was in this world, he did nothing but help people, heal people, teach truth. He never picked up a sword. He never did anything. His power was in his words. And he became a major threat to the powers that be. They did not like him because Jesus would interact with people nobody else would have. He would heal people everybody thought were gone too far. He would forgive people that society had cast aside as unforgivable. And because of this, he was dangerous. And so the Jewish authorities, working with the Roman authorities, cooked up a plot, managed to get one of his inner circle to betray him, and took Jesus. They beat him, they whipped him, and then they crucified him because they decided that he was so dangerous he had to die. And so while he was on this cross, he made a number of statements, and one of them is, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. If anybody had a reason to resent people, Jesus did. He lived a perfect life, yet he was tried as a criminal. He had done nothing but heal and teach truth and reaching out to people. Yet some of those same people were in the crowd yelling, crucify him, crucify him. He'd felt betrayed. His loyalist followers, his best friends, cut and ran. He was on his own. Accusations were made against him that were so flippant they couldn't carry in court. It was all done at night, hush, hush. He was abused. He was horrifically treated. And he was crucified. If anybody in history should not have died, it was him. Yet humanity, we took this man and we killed him. And on his deathbed, he said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. What does this mean? First of all, why is he saying it? What is the purpose? And here we come to the crux. The cornerstone of Easter is that Jesus was doing something that was so powerful, so earth-changing, so revolutionary, it was going to turn the world upside down. And all of a sudden, the hopeless, the unforgivable, the unforgiven, humanity at its worst, suddenly things got inverted. Suddenly, it became possible for people that society marginalized and did away with and considered too bad or too dangerous or all those kind of things, all of a sudden had access to a perfect God because of the sacrifice he would make. So I'm walking through these notes because I want to leave a little time for introspection afterwards. Before Christ, this was a response of how we treated people as far as forgiveness. An eye for an eye. You owe me and justice is mine. This was actually written into Torah. And so the idea was, okay, if someone damages someone in such a way, that damage had to be done to them. There's only one problem. You know what the problem is? We only have two eyes. What do you do when you run out of eyes? And so that generational resentment, that unforgiveness, lived a dominant tone right up to the time of Jesus. Here's Jesus' response after him, is God forgave me, so I'll forgive you. God was going to make it a requirement that we enter into an agreement with him that is scary. It's really funny because the requirements of being a follower of Jesus Christ is to give our lives to him. But one of the qualities, and Jesus didn't put a lot of these on us. Christianity is really a free faith. It really is. It's flexible in methodology and all kinds of things like that. The cornerstone of the message is the law of love. But one thing God absolutely will not compromise with us on is this. If you want forgiveness from me, you have to forgive. And, you know, on introspection, I'm looking at it and I'm going, that's really harsh. Like, have you any idea what they did to me? Have you any idea what my sister went through, my mother went through? It's too much. It's too far. I can't forgive them. I can't let go of that. If I let go of that, who's going to make it right? If I turn my back on that and all those kind of things, who's going to do anything about it? And we're left in a place of confusion and hurt. And we go, God, this is too far. That's too much. And we miss the miracle. We miss the miracle. Jesus in the Lord's Prayer prayed, forgive us our debts as we've also forgiven our debtors. And so Jesus told his followers a story one time, a parable, and I'm just going to read through some of it. He said, therefore the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who decided to bring his accounts up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. In the process, one of his debtors was brought in who owed him millions of dollars. He couldn't pay, so his master ordered that he be sold along with his wife, children, and everything he owned to pay the debt. That was how you dealt with things in those days. Actually, people were commodities as much as their items were, because there wasn't a lot of monetary money and things like that, and so you could be sold as a slave. In fact, the Roman Empire had more slaves than citizens. So his hearers would know exactly what he's saying. And when he talks about millions of dollars, he's talking about this debt that's so astronomical There's no way this guy could ever pay it. Guy could work 24/7 the rest of his life and not even make a dent in it. Which begs the question, what did he borrow it for? But the man fell down before his master, and he begged him, "Please be patient with me, I will pay it all." And his master was filled with pity for him, and he released him and forgave his debt. Now, this is crazy. He's not saying, okay, you got more time. He's not saying, well, by next Wednesday I want to see some action. He's not saying, give me post-dated checks. He's not saying, we're going to hold on to your wife and kids until you do it. He erases the whole debt. The guy walks out, excuse the pun, scot-free. And you think, this master must be crazy. What could prompt him to make this catastrophic business decision? And it says, pity. He took pity on the servant. So he forgave his debt. Lessons from the forgiving servant. The debtor can't always repay you. Sometimes you've been hurt by someone, or they've hurt your family, or they've come and gone, and there's no way the debt can ever be paid. And here's the truth. In us, and I'm going to park on this again in a few minutes, in humanity, the debt was so astronomical, there was no way we could ever pay it. It was beyond us. It was like me owing $10 billion. I could spend the rest of my life going crazy, playing lotteries, doing all kinds of things, and I might get lucky and get a few million, but billions, it isn't going to happen. Some have done it, but it is such a rare occurrence that someone becomes a billionaire that it's 1 in a billion. So the man couldn't always pay it. But here's what can happen. The offended can always show mercy. It says, master was filled with pity. Here's the thing, is when someone owes you, and when I'm harboring unforgiveness, it's like debt. You owe me. You owe me because you hurt me. I heard about what you said about me. I loaned you that money and then never saw a cent. You had an inheritance to share with me and you ripped me off, you took me to court. All these things. And the only person who can let that person go is the one who's been wronged. And you think, why would I let it go? Well, here's the thing. God requires that I do it. Here's the thing. He says, and the parable continues, he says, a man goes out, finds someone that owes him about $5 or $10. And the man said, I can't pay you back. Please have mercy on him. The man does to the other man exactly what the master, or he did to his master. And the man says, no. And he has his friend thrown into prison and tortured for this pittance amount. And you say, well, you know, the things I'm trying to forgive are not a pittance. Park with me in a minute. We'll talk about that. But the master, when he found out how this servant had treated another servant, says this, you evil servant, I forgave you a tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant just as I had mercy on you? And then the angry king sent away the man to prison to be tortured until he had paid his entire debt. That's what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters from your heart. Can I say something? And I want to say this right so that you understand. We think singular when it comes to forgiveness, right? When I'm not forgiving something, it normally has some sort of connection to me, right? I'm not going to forgive because of how you treated my mother or my friend or me. Most importantly, me. And so we tend to think that that debt of unforgiveness, there's really 3 people involved. There's me, the person who's wronged me, and God. And I'm going, God, you want me to forgive them, but I'm not such a bad guy. I lived a good life. I haven't killed anybody. I pay my tithes and offerings. I volunteer at my church. I volunteer in my community. I don't beat my wife. My kids like me. I'm a pretty decent guy. But them, they're so bad. You know, I'm not going to let them go, because if I let them go, they'll just get away with anything, or they'll do it to me again. And we get that mentality that I'm okay, but they're not. Psychologists call this a self-serving bias. The self-serving bias is how we tend to look at the world through our own glasses of our own selfishness. But here's the thing. I want you to change the perspective of that picture, step outside of it for a moment, and see how this is seen. God, when he looks at us, sees all humanity. All humanity. The Nazi guard that killed the woman and baby is one of mine. The man back in the Middle Ages that oppressed his people and starved them to death, he was me. The people that nailed Jesus to that cross and out of maliciousness nailed him and crucified him, that was me. You see, when God put Jesus on that cross, and when he was dying and when he was doing that, he was not looking at individuals, he was looking at mankind. And so the price to pay was so astronomical, it could cover every sin, every wrong, every hurt, every sickness, every illness in the whole universe throughout all history. You see, Jesus dying on the cross was not a nice example. It wasn't, hey, a good guy or another martyr for, good things or all that kind of things. It was God himself saying, humanity is so corrupt and has become so bad that when he looks at you, he sees us all. He knows what your great-great-great-grandmother did. And he knows the connection, because we all come back to that one couple, Adam and Eve. The sin that I carry is not just my own. I carry yours. I carry my grandparents. I carry the different nationalities that carry me. I carry all this oppression. And all over the world, people are talking to their oppressors or challenging their oppressors, saying, you owe me, pay me more money, give me my land back, give me all these kind of things. And where do you stop? Everybody has been oppressed, and everyone has oppressed in history. So when God is forgiving my sin, he's forgiving all of it. And he is inviting me into his presence. And the audacious things he does out of grace is like a master forgiving millions and millions and millions of dollars. He forgives me so completely that when God sees me, he sees Jesus. He sees what Jesus did. He sees my sins atoned for. All the sins I've ever done, could do, and am guilty through association with, because I am human and we're all human and we are all connected. All our souls are darkened by sin. And when I understand it in that perspective, I realize that when God chooses to forgive me, that debt isn't just mine. It's all of ours. What he died for was enough to cover every sin ever committed, and some. So when he says to us, and we turn to him and we say, Father, forgive my sin, we are coming to him with the credibility of a race that is so corrupt and has such a terrible history that it is absolutely unforgivable. And so in perspective of that, when I don't forgive you or you don't forgive me, or I've been hurt, I don't release it, I am basically saying Jesus was not enough. That there are some things that are beyond that price. And you know what is an absolute slap into the face of God is for us to look at the cross and say, it's not enough. What more could God possibly have done? He did it all. And so people like that young lady live in a reality that they go, horrible things have happened to me. I'm lucky to be alive. But when he forgave me, he forgave my oppressors. And now I look to life and I look at humanity, I look at all those things, I go, they need the same Christ I do. And it allows me to let go of that. Just quickly, some practical ways to forget sin. Look to Jesus for an example of his grace. Have you put your unforgiveness in light of what he did and what he suffered and what he was able to cover? Are you looking at God's gift and you're going, that's no way. Can you refuse to gossip about your hurt? Often we stew in our own juices, I remember someone saying. We carry hurts around with us, and they accelerate and they embitter us because we just will not let them go. Eliminate griping. Often when we gripe about all kinds of things, it's an indicator, and I'm a famous griper. I hate slow drivers. I hate drivers that don't use their signals. I hate drivers that shouldn't be on the road. I hate drivers that get in my way, all those kind of things. And on any given day when I'm out in my car, and you experience right after I park it and get out of the car, not a good time for Scott. Okay? I'm a little lost then. I mumble and grumble, and even once in a while a colorful metaphor comes out when I'm driving in. I just feel bad about that. But when we eliminate that griping, we replace it with things like Scripture. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let's rejoice and be glad in it. It actually enables us to forgive more. Build good habits of mercy, the memorization of Scripture. Pray for your enemies. Boy, this is hard. When someone's wrong for you, pray for them. And bless those that curse you. Someone's talking bad about you, and you get a chance to talk about them, do the on the other hand thing. Say, so-and-so, yeah, you know what? They're great at their job. They really are. And you're going, I have every reason to complain and whine about that person, but part of the path to forgiveness is me going, I'm entrusting it with God. He is so big and has done so much. This is important. Jesus said to his followers, you who listen, say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you. And when sin seems too big, it is all in light of what God did. So you understand what I was teaching you today? We're talking about Good Friday, and we're going to have communion in a couple minutes. The price that was paid was the largest this universe will ever see. Multi-billion-dollar business deals have nothing on this. This was the blood on the hands of humanity presented to a holy God. And instead of doing what he should have done, which is eliminate the human race long ago, because I got to be honest, as a student of history, the atrocities they've committed, I see very little hope for humanity in the future or the past. The 20th century was the most bloody century of all time. More people got killed and died, and civilians, than all the previous 19 combined. It was horrible. When I look at the hopelessness of that, it has to be paid by a big price. And so God said, they can't pay it. There's no way. It's insurmountable. I will pay it. And he stood in our stead, and he paid the price for humanity. So that when we turn to him, and today this might be the first time you do this, and you say, God, I have so much bitterness, I have so much unforgiveness, and I've hurt you too. I stand guilty along with humanity. Please forgive me and help me forgive. He wipes the slate clean. Have you been carrying this burden long enough? How long has it been on your shoulders? Are you tired of it yet? Is carrying around the hatred and the unforgiveness and the bitterness and all those kind of things, is it getting a little heavy for you? Today, it all can get dropped like a sack of potatoes. And you can walk forward with God free and new because of what happened on Good Friday. And that is all I got to say about that. So if you're here today, and I'm just going to ask the basket people to come around and the worship team to come up. I want to thank you for coming today. I really do. And I want to reiterate again that this message is huge. And you may be here today, and you may be somebody that feels like, I've always been a Christian and all those kind of things. But today's kind of hit you between the eyes like it does me when I'm writing these things. And you're going, I have treated this with such pittance, or I've forgotten, or I'm kind of carrying a lot of unforgiveness around with me. And if you're that person today, I want to encourage you that coming back to God at times like this can be as liberating and as freeing as the first time you did it. And so make a challenge for yourself. Determine you're not going to walk out of this room with that burden on your shoulders anymore. And when I pray, let it go. Let it go. And start over. Okay? Or maybe today you've been going, you know what, I don't know much about religion. I kind of came today because Good Friday's a good time. You know, it's the time of year, Christmas and Easter, you show up at church, and thought it was a good idea to come. Can I say something? God is meant for you to be here. You are not here by accident. And you're saying, you know, I've never heard anybody talk like this. I've never heard about this. I've never really thought of the collective guilt of humanity in a way like this before. And I've never seen or understood the grace of God and what he did. And as I look at the young lady, I go, wow, she can forgive. Is it possible I could experience that freedom too? Maybe today's the day you go, okay, Jesus, I get it. Now I get it. I want it. And when I pray in a couple of minutes, it might be the first time you say, okay, Jesus, I'm in. Today, I'm going to try this. I'm going to jump in with both feet, and I'm going to try it, and I'm going to see what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ. And make a commitment the next week. You're going to come back on Sunday and whenever you can to learn how this transformation heads in the right direction. I'm asking you to sacrifice an hour and a bit each Sunday morning to come in this room, get together with everybody here as we try to unpack this incredible gift. Or if you're from somewhere else, to find a place that believes this. And getting in with them. If you need a recommendation, just give me a call. I know pastors all across Canada. And encounter what this means. Because this, if you get this right, it changes everything. You get this right, the life that you need for God to have you is on the other side. You get this right, your life is just beginning, man. It doesn't matter if you're 180 years old. Because when you step out of this world, you step into another. If you get this right, changes everything. And so I'm going to pray a prayer. And then I'm going to ask the worship team to lead us in a song. Father, thank you for Easter. Thank you for Good Friday. Thank you for the sacrifice of your Son. Thank you that you look down on humanity and the horrific history and the horrific reality of how we treat each other. And you took our selfish, sinful, collective guilt, and you recognized that a price had to be paid. And so you stepped in and paid that price yourself. There's no way we could have expected you to do it. It doesn't even make sense for you to do it. But love doesn't make sense sometimes. And God, you stepped in that chasm for me. Father, the least I can do is release it from me. And so, Father, if there's someone here today and the church has been kind of a flippant, surfacey thing for them, today I ask that you renew in us the passion, what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ, to be clean, be new, and have life. Help us to unburden ourselves. And then, Father, there's several people here, I'm sure, today that this is the first time they've heard the Easter message like this. God, I pray that you open their hearts and that in understanding it, they come to you and, like myself, come to you and say, Father, forgive me. I had no idea. Please forgive me and unburden me and help me to forgive others. I want to live with you in my life. I want to live for you. I want to follow you. I want to learn what this means. I want to come back next week. I want to start reading my Bible. I want to do all these things. I want to discover more about this. And so today I'm stepping into your world and aligning myself with you. Please take my burden. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Why don't you stand now? If you have to leave, God bless you. I hope your message has been as transformational for you as it has for me. But if you'd like to stay, we're going to have communion. And communion is just where we remember. It would just be about 5 minutes and just take some time to remember. I'm going to do something a little different today. And I'm going to ask and say, if you, like me, really need to hear this message again, and this is something that today has really helped you unburden yourself. You can put your hand up. Anybody? Yeah? We got a few around here. If today is the day that you have made the decision for the first time, then I'd like you not to put your hand up, but come and talk to me. because I've got a Bible for you and stuff like that. I'm not going to single you out in that. There's a time where you will need to get up in front of people and say, I'm in with Jesus. It's called your baptism. And we're going to be doing one of those in June. And so today is the day you've entered kind of this new arrangement of unforgiveness. First of all, come and have communion with us and enjoy. But secondly, come and talk to me about it. And I'm going to I'll give you a Bible, show you where to read it and things like that, and start working on helping you out. Because those formative times can be a little bit different and those kind of things. So if you're that person today, just grab me after communion and I'll make a point of directing you a little bit. Okay? God bless you. Remember, we walk in unforgiveness. We are unburdened. He paid the price for the human race. And when we accept his gift of salvation, we are made clean. We'll see you on Sunday if you have to go. God bless you.